We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Beis and Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 12b. The Gemara is in the middle of an interesting story that came before Rav Chisda. There was a man who was Mekadesh a woman with a blue marble stone, and Rav Chisda was investigating whether it was worth a Shava Pruta or whether it was not worth a Shava Pruta, and it's not a Kiddushin. He determined that it was not worth a Shava Pruta, it was not a Kiddushin, and so therefore this woman, she had accepted a Kiddushin from a second man. Rav Chisda said that that second Kiddushin was considered a good Kiddushin, because the first Kiddushin was not a good Kiddushin, because the stone was not worth a Pruta. And the mother of the first man who was Mekadesh the woman, the mother came to Rav Chisda, and she said, even though it's not worth a Shava Pruta right now, but at the time of the Kiddushin, it actually was worth a Shava Pruta. And Rav Chisda said, you're not believed to say that at a different time it was worth a Shava Pruta in order to now prohibit her on the second man. You're not believed to do that. And Rav Chisda now brings a case that was similar. Lav Hainu de Yehudis. Wasn't that the same thing that happened with Yehudis? De Visu de Rav Chia. She was the wife of Rav Chia. De Havis Lot Sar Leida. She had a lot of pain when she gave birth to children, and therefore she did not want to be married to Rav Chia anymore. She didn't want to have any more children. Amrele, so she said to him, she said to Rabbi Chia, Amrele, my mother told me, Kibel bech avoch kiddushe kizutris, that your father accepted a kiddushin on your behalf when you were young, meaning she said to Rav Chia, I'm not really married to you, because when I was younger, my father accepted a kiddushin on my behalf. Amar lo, so he said to her, Lav kol kamina de'imach, your mother is not believed, she doesn't have such power, da'asr lachi lave, that with that statement she can now make you usr to me. She can't simply say that a long time ago you were told by your mother saying that a long time ago you had a kiddushin from someone else because your father accepted it. She's not believed to make you usr to me, and that's the same thing over here. Rav Chisda says to the mother, you're not believed to say that it was worth a Shava Pruta, and therefore she is now usr to the second man. You're not believed to say that. And Rashi explains, Lav Hainu de Yehudis, isn't this the story of Yehudis? Rav Chisda Kamarla, this is Rav Chisda speaking, and he's saying this is the story of Yehudis, the wife of Rabbi Chia. Tsar Leida, she had pain when she gave birth to children. This is a story in Yevamos. Shahaisa Yoledis to Umim, she gave birth to twins. The Amar Mar, the master said, Yehuda v'Chizkiya Achi, Yehuda and Chizkiya were twin brothers, and Pazi v'Tavi Achvasa, Pazi and Tavi were twin sisters. She gave birth to these twins. The Gemara in Yevamos describes how they were painful births. And so then she said, Kibel bach avach kiddushin, that my mother said that your father accepted for you kiddushin me'ishacher from another man, u'bal ze asr lach, and your husband over here is asr to you. So she made that claim, and again, Rabbi Chia responded, she's not able to make such a claim to make you asr to me. And the Gemara continues the story. Amri le Rabbanan le Rav Chisda. The Rabbanan said to Rav Chisda, Amai, but why did you rule that first Kiddushin is not good? Ha'ika sahadi be'idis. There are witnesses in Idis, the Yadi, that they know. Tvahu yoma have a be shava pruta, that actually on that day, the stone that he gave actually was worth a pruta. And so Rav Chisda responded to that, Hashta mielo lesnu kamon. Right now, those witnesses are not in front of us, and therefore we cannot rely on that. Lav hainu Rabbi Chanina. Isn't that the same thing that Rabbi Chanina said? The Yomer Rabbi Chanina, because Rabbi Chanina said, Eideha b'tzad Istan, her Eidim are at the side, they're in Istan, they're in a different place, B'teyasar, and therefore she should be prohibited. In other words, Rabbi Chanina already said, just because there are Eidim in some other location, that's not enough to create a prohibition. And Rashi explains, Be'idis, again, the Rabbanan came to Rav Chisda and they said that there are Eidim in Idis who know that on the day the man was Mekadesh, the woman with a stone, it was worth a Shava Pruta on that day. Idis is Shem Mokum, it's the name of a place. V'osu Hayom, Hayu B'kan, that day they were here. V'halchu lahem, and they left. So those witnesses, that should be good enough to say that Kiddushin was a good Kiddushin. And Rav Chisda's response was that right now they're not here. That's the same case as the Rabbi Chanina. That's the same case as Rabbi Chanina. Rashi explains that case is B'ksubis. That's a case in Ksubis. Gabe Binse de Shmuel de Shtavi. And the case over there is the daughters of Shmuel were taken captive. Vaisinu levei midrasha. They were brought to the Beis Medrash. The captors brought them to the Beis Medrash. They wanted to sell them for ransom. Vaisinu levei midrasha de Rabbi Chanina. They brought them to the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Chanina. V'ukminu l'shavuyayu avroi. The Gemara over there says that the daughters of Shmuel, they knew the halacha, and they said to the captors, you stay on the outside, we'll go in, and we'll inform them that we were taken captive and that we were not defiled. Ha'amrin ishbesiu tahorani. This daughter said, I was captured, but I'm pure. V'cheinidach, and the same with the other one. So essentially it was like a pesha aser, pesha hitter. I'm the one that's telling you I was taken captive, and I'm also telling you that I'm pure. V'yitiram lakuna, and based on that, they said they're mutter to marry Kohanim, because they said we believe them, even though they're telling us they were taken captive, but we believe them that they were not defiled. V'yamru leila Rabbi Chanina. So then the story goes on to say that they said to Rabbi Chanina, the people who were present said to Rabbi Chanina, Ha'ika sahadi b'Medina Sayam. There are witnesses in Medina Sayam. Shero son shenishbu. They saw that they were captured. We're not totally relying on their testimony. There are witnesses that know they were captured. Utananim yesh edim shenishbis v'hi omeres tahora ani. The halach is that if there are Eidim that know they were captured, and then she says, I'm pure, Einan menace, she's not believed. V'yamar lehu, so it was on that story that he said to them, again, that was Rabbi Chanina's response, Hashtami lesnu, they're not in front of us right now, Ve'enon me'idin al shavyasan v'natzirim, therefore, they're not testifying in front of us right now, and therefore we're able to say that they are mutter. That was the statement of Rabbi Chanina, Eidea b'tzad iston. Rashi says, Eidea b'tzad iston, ruach tzifonis, the Eidim are in the north, Ve'enon boimu me'idim, they're not coming and testifying. V'tei asr, therefore you should say asr, it doesn't make sense, bitmiya, it makes no sense to say that. That was Rabbi Chanina's comment. And the Gemara over here notes, the Gemara continues, Abaye v'Rava lo svira lehu l'hadar Rav Chisda. Abaye and Rava, they actually did not agree to that which Rav Chisda said. Rashi says, lo svira lehu l'hadar Rav Chisda l'hatira. Rav Chisda was saying that in this case, the woman is permitted because we don't care about the fact that there are witnesses that know it was worth a shava pruta, mishum de'ika sahadi be'idyas, because of the fact that there are witnesses in idyas. In other words, according to Rav Chisda, we're makel over here. We don't care about the fact that there are witnesses, but Abaye and Rava, they don't agree. Abaye they didn't agree to Rav Chisda. Rather, they said, if we're lenient in the case of a captive, meaning in the case of Rabbi Chanina, in the case of the daughters of Shmuel, there we're lenient by a captive because she purposely makes herself disgusting. Gabe Shavoy, she makes herself disgusting to the captors. It makes sense to say that she was not violated because she's trying not to be violated. But Nekel Be'eshes Ish, but we should be lenient by a case of Eshes Ish, meaning Abai and Rava said, in this case, you do have a possibility that it was worth a Shava Pruta, and therefore we should assume that maybe that Kiddushin with the first man actually was a good Kiddushin. And the Gemara notes, Ishtor me'ahi mishpacha besura, there were some remaining descendants from that family. In other words, this woman, she assumed that her Kiddushin from the first man was not a good Kiddushin. She went on and married someone else, and she had children, she had descendants, and there were descendants that were in Surah. Uparshu Rabbanan Minan, the Rabbanan actually separated from those descendants. They said there's a concern really that this is a problem of Mamzeris, because maybe she really was married to the first man. But the Gemara notes, V'lav mishum desvir lukat de Shmuel. But it's not because they hold like Shmuel, meaning it's not because we are concerned that maybe it was worth a Shava Pruta in a different location. That was a concern on the previous summit. That wasn't the concern. El mishum desvir luhu ke Abaye v'Rava. The reason is because they hold like Abaye and Rava, meaning Abaye and Rava, since there are witnesses in another location who say that it was worth a Shava Pruta at that time, that actually is a concern, and that's why the Rabbanan were strict. And Rashi says, from that family, meaning she had married someone else, she assumed the first Kiddushin was not good and she had children. And it's not that they held the Rabbanan who were strict with this family. It's not that they held like Shmuel, that we should be concerned maybe it's worth a pruta in a different location in Madai. The reason is because they held like Abai and Rava. They were concerned since there are witnesses in another location in Idis, so we shouldn't be lenient. There are witnesses in another place that can testify that it was worth a Shava Pruta at that time. And the Gemara continues, Hahu Gavra da Agdish B'Shutisa da Asa B'Shuka. There was a man who was Makadesh, a woman with a myrtle branch in the marketplace. Sholcha Rav Acha bar Huna Lakami de Rav Yosef. Rav Acha bar Huna sent the case before Rav Yosef. Ki I gav namai, in such a situation, what's the halacha? Sholach le, he sent to him, Nagde Karav, the man should receive lashes as in accordance with the ruling of Rav, which we will see in a moment. V'yitzrich Gita K'Shmuel, and also she requires a get in accordance with the ruling of Shmuel, that there's a possibility that it's worth a Shava Pruta, and therefore, because of that possibility, she requires a get. And the Gemara says, the Rav mangid al the Mekadesh b'Shukah, because Rav would give Malchus to men who were Mekadesh in the marketplace, V'al the Mekadesh b'Biyah, and also to someone who was Mekadesh with an act of relations, V'al the Mekadesh below Shiducha, and also someone who would be Mekadesh without arranging it first, without making the Shidduch first, V'al the Mevatel Gita, and also on somebody who would nullify a get, V'al the Mosar Modah Agita, and also somebody who would put out a Modah on a get, meaning he would say that the get was forced, it's not a good get, V'al the Mitzar Shlucha de Rabbanan, and also somebody who would pain a shliach of the bezin, a shliach of the rabbanon. The al dechala shamte love tlasin yom, and also on somebody who was in chayrim for 30 days and he didn't do the proper teshuva. The al chasna dayer bechamu, and also on a son-in-law who lived by the house of his father-in-law. And the Gemara comments, the dayer in chalif lo, he has to live by the house of his father-in-law. That's the problem, but if he passes by, it's not a problem. Vahu chasna de chalif abava de bechamua, but there was a chassan, there was a son-in-law, who passed by the doorway of his father-in-law's house. V'nagde Rav Sheshes, and Rav Sheshes gave him malchus. And the Gemara says to that, Ahu meidam havas daima over there. Ahu meidam havas daima chamse minei. Over there were suspicions between him and his mother-in-law. So there, just the passing by the house was considered problematic. But in general, it's only if they live in the house. If the son-in-law lives in the house of the father-in-law, it's problematic because again, we're afraid there'll be an inappropriate relationship with the mother-in-law. And the Gemara continues, Nahardoi Amri, Nahardoi, they say, Bekulu lo mangid Rav. In all of these cases we just listed, Rav did not give Malkus. Ella al mekadesh bebiya below shiducha. The only case he gave Malkus is if somebody was mekadesh, a woman with an act of relations, and there was no arrangement ahead of time, there was no shidduch ahead of time. Vika diamri, there are those that say va'afilu b'shiducha. Even if there was an arrangement ahead of time, still if someone was mekadesh bebiya, they got Malkus. Nami also in that case they got Malkus mishum pritzusa, because that's considered to be an act of pritzus. And Rashi explains, B'shutisa da'asa b'shevet bad shel hadas. Again, the individual, the man, used a myrtle branch for Kiddushin. Nagde karav mishum pritzusa dekadish b'shuka. So he should get Malkus, like Rav says, that's considered pritzus, to be mekadesh out in the open in the marketplace. V'yatzru chagita, and she should get a get in basali nase lachar. If she wants to marry someone else, she should get a get kishmuel, like Shmuel says. Damar cheshin and shema shava pruta b'madai, because we have a concern. Maybe it was worth a shava pruta somewhere else. Maybe it's worth a shava pruta in madai. The Rav mangid mishum pritzus. Again, the list of items where Rav gave Malkus, it's all because of pritzus. It's all because of inappropriate behavior. Ve'al mevatel gita, and somebody who is mevatel a get, what's the issue over there? Hasholeach get liishto. If somebody sends a get to his wife, v'higia b'shliach v'yomar lo get shanasati loch batalu. He reaches the shliach and he says, the get that I gave you is batal. Dilma lo yadi le inshi the batale kodim sheyavel yada. So the problem is, maybe people won't know his batal before it got to her hand. B'shemi yitzanenu hashliach la'achar shebatlu la'achar shebatlu. V'tinasebo, maybe the shliach gave it after it was already nullified, and then she ends up getting married. She uses such a get to remarry when it was really nullified, and that's why that's a problem when he's mevatel the get. She might rely on the get where it's not really kosher. And similarly, v'al demasar modah gita, another case that Rav gave Malkus, somebody places a modah on a get, meaning kegon beget hamuusa b'Yisrael demotzi laz al boneh. You have a get and it's forced, it's coerced, so he's being motzi laz on her children. He's essentially saying, the get that I gave, it was coerced, it's not a good get. That's a problem. And also the mitzar shliach the rabbanon, also someone who was mitzar, who gave pain to the shliach of the rabbanon, shemazmino ledin mipi adayonim. The shliach of the rabbanon here is an agent of the court, telling him to come to court. V'zeh kamalav makei, when the guy gets up and hits the shliach of the court, that person also will get Malkus. Ve'al chasna the dair bebeis chamu, and also on his son-in-law who lives in the house of his father-in-law, shemi kashel bosh estam chamoso heves es chasna. Most mother-in-laws love their son-in-laws, we're afraid there'll be an inappropriate relationship. The Amar Mar havizar b'ishtecha mechasna rishon. That's what it says in Meseches Psachim. And the Gemara says even passing by was a problem in one particular case, because Meidam Havis Daima Cham Semine. In that case, there was already suspicions between him and the mother-in-law. Chashtui Mimanu Lashon Duma Bas Duma. It's the same language that's used in Meseches Sota to mean there's a suspicion. And so again, that's why in that particular case, there was Malkus. And the Gemara continues, Hahu Gavra de Kaddish B'tzifsa Diyasa. There was a man who was Makadesh, a woman, with a mat that was made out of myrtle. Amruleh, they said to him, V'oles B'shava Pruta, but it's not worth a Shava Pruta, it's not a good Kiddushin. Amar Lahu, he said to them, Tikdosh Ba'ar Bazuzeh de Ispa, she should be Mekudeshes with the 4 zuz that are contained, they're wrapped up in this mat. Shekalta v'ishtika, she took the mat and she was silent. Amar Rava says, Haveshtikusa de la'achar matan mos, this is silence after the money was already given. V'chol shtikusa de la'achar matan mos lav klumi, and any silence after the money was already given, that's worth nothing. And Rashi explains, B'tzifsa diyasa machtzeles shel hadas, again, that's a mat made out of myrtle. B'dalet zuzeh de ispa kruchim hayabah, there were 4 zuz wrapped within the mat. Shekalta kolomar naktala, meaning she took it v'lo shlachta v'ishtika, meaning she didn't throw it down to the ground, she just took it and she was silent. And the Gemara said, have a shtika de la'achar matan mos, that's considered silence after the money was already given. Shemitchila keshekibalta, because originally when she received it, v'hamos hayu besoch, and the money was inside it, lo yadaba, and she didn't know about the money. Uchashiyada achar kein, and when she found out after about the money, v'shaska, and she was quiet, shtika de la'achar matan mosi, that's a silence after the money was already given. V'lav klumi, that's nothing. The reason why she was quiet was because she didn't care anymore. She was saying to herself, originally when I took it, I didn't think of that. I didn't know there was any money in there. And therefore she assumes that this Kiddushin was nothing, and the silence does not prove that she accepted it for the purpose of Kiddushin. And the Gemara continues on my Rava. Rava says, Mino aminullah, from where can I prove that this is the case? Again, that if you have shtikusa de la'achar matan mos, that it's nothing. Titania, as we learned in a brayso, Amar lo, let's say he says to her, Kinsi sela zu bepikadun. Take this sela, it's a pikadun, it's a deposit. V'chazar v'yamar, but then afterwards he says to her, Hiskachi libo, I want it to be for a kiddushin. B'shas matan mos mekudeshes. If it's at the time that the money is given, that's a good kiddushin. La'achar matan mos, but if it's after the money is given, rotzta mekudeshes, then if she agrees it's a kiddushin. Lo rotzta eina mekudeshes. If she doesn't agree, then it's not a good kiddushin. And Rashi explains, Menoa minun la de shtika de lachar matan mos lav klumi. How can I show you that shtika, that silence after the money is given, is nothing? B'shas matan mos im kodem shekibaltan, meaning to say as follows: if before she received it, Amar lo hiskachi libo, if before she ever received it, he said it should be a kiddushin, so then in that situation, mekudeshes, that's already a good kiddushin. The kibiltoi adaita the hachi kibiltoi, because when she accepted it with that understanding. So in such a situation, that's what we say b'shas matan mos, meaning she knew about it beforehand. That's a good kiddushin. But again, la'achar matan mos, it depends if she agrees or she does not agree. And so the Gemara says, my rotzto, my lo rotzto. What does this brayso mean? What does it mean she agrees? What does it mean she doesn't agree? Ilema rotzto de amra in. If you're going to say that rotzto means she says yes, she says it's good, she wants it to be for kiddushin. And lo rotzto de amra lo, and when it says lo rotzto, it means that she says no. So mechlal de reisha, that would imply that in the reisha of the brayso, in the first case of the brayso, and Rashi says if you're going to say again rotzto and lo rotzto means she says yes or no, mechlal de reisha de lo polig bein rotzto lo rotzto, that would imply that the reisha, that doesn't make any distinction between rotzto and lo rotzto. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph.